She found a deed folded in her late grandma's Bible. It led to a cottage no one knew. After her grandmother's funeral, Emily discovers a hidden property deed inside an old Bible, leading her toward a mysterious cottage no one in the family has ever mentioned. The last thing Emily expected to inherit from her grandmother was a mystery. 3 days after the funeral, she sat alone in her grandmother's tiny living room. The house felt strangely empty without the woman who had filled every corner with laughter, humming, and the smell of fresh cinnamon bread. Boxes surrounded her. Family photos, old letters, dusty decorations. Most relatives had already taken whatever they wanted. Emily volunteered to finish sorting the rest. She opened a cabinet and found her grandmother's favorite Bible. The leather cover was worn and cracked. Dozens of colorful bookmarks stuck out between the pages. Emily smiled. Her grandmother never went anywhere without it.
As she opened the Bible, something slipped out and landed on the floor. A folded yellow document. She picked it up. At first, she thought it was another church pamphlet. Then she noticed the official seal. Her smile disappeared. The paper was a property deed. The owner listed was her grandmother. The property address meant nothing to Emily. In fact, she'd never heard anyone mention it before. Not once. She stared at the document. Her grandmother had never been wealthy. She lived modestly her entire life. So why did she secretly own another property? And why hide the deed inside a Bible? Emily immediately called her mother. "Mom, did Grandma ever own a cottage outside town?" Silence. "What cottage?" Emily read the address. Another pause. "No, I've never heard of that place. What if she rented it?" No idea. Her mother sounded genuinely confused. The next day, Emily showed the deed to her uncle. He frowned. Never seen that address before. Grandma never mentioned it? Not once. The mystery only deepened. That evening, Emily sat at the kitchen table studying the document. A handwritten note appeared on the back. The faded ink was barely visible. It read, "For the right person, when the time is right." Emily felt goosebumps rise along her arms. The handwriting belonged to her grandmother. Suddenly, the room felt colder. For years, her grandmother had told strange stories. Stories about hidden blessings, second chances, and doors that only opened when people were ready. Everyone assumed they were just old sayings. Now, Emily wasn't so sure. She searched the address online. The property appeared on an old county map. The location sat deep in the woods, nearly 2 hours away. No photographs existed, no records beyond the original deed, nothing. It was as if the place had disappeared from history. That alone should have scared her. Instead, curiosity took over. The following Saturday, Emily packed snacks, filled her gas tank, and started driving. "Tell me, where are you watching from? I'm curious to know." The highway eventually turned into narrow country roads, then gravel, then dirt. The GPS signal vanished. "Great," she muttered. "Exactly how horror movies start." She laughed nervously at her own joke. The woods grew thicker. Branches stretched over the road like giant fingers. After nearly 30 minutes of slow driving, she spotted an old wooden sign hidden behind vines. The address matched. Her heart raced. A long driveway disappeared into the trees. Emily followed it. A few moments later, the forest suddenly opened. And there it was, a cottage. Small, beautiful, completely hidden. The roof looked surprisingly well maintained. Flower gardens surrounded the front porch. Someone had clearly cared for the property.
No family member knew it existed. No neighbors were nearby. No maintenance records appeared online. Emily stepped out of her car. The afternoon breeze rustled through the trees. Then she noticed something strange. Fresh tire tracks. Someone had been here recently. Very recently. She slowly walked toward the front door. A brass key hung from a ribbon beneath the porch railing. Waiting. Almost as if someone knew she would come. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the door. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. Inside, sunlight illuminated a perfectly preserved room. And sitting on the center table was a framed photograph. A photograph of Emily, taken just 6 months ago. She froze, because she had never been here before. Or so she thought. Emily explores the hidden cottage and uncovers secrets connecting her grandmother to a mysterious chapter of family history no one ever knew existed. Emily stood frozen in the doorway. The photograph stared back at her. It was definitely her. The picture had been taken 6 months earlier at a charity event downtown. She remembered posing for it. But how had it ended up inside a secret cottage hidden in the woods? Her pulse pounded. Slowly, she stepped inside. Dust should have covered everything. Instead, the room looked clean. Lived in. Loved. A knitted blanket rested neatly on a chair. Fresh firewood sat beside the stone fireplace. A vase of dried flowers decorated the table. The cottage felt less abandoned and more paused, as though someone had simply stepped out for a moment. Emily picked up the photograph. A note was attached to the back. "My sweet girl, one day you'll understand." Grandma. The handwriting was unmistakable. Emily swallowed hard. A mixture of grief and confusion twisted inside her chest. "Understand what?" she whispered. The cottage held only 4 rooms. A living room, a kitchen, a bedroom, a study. The study immediately caught her attention. Bookshelves lined every wall. Hundreds of journals filled the shelves, each labeled with a year. 1982, 1983, 1984, and so on. Nearly 40 years of journals. Emily carefully pulled one from the shelf. The first page contained a date. Then her grandmother's handwriting. Every journal documented visits to the cottage. Thoughts, memories, dreams, and family stories. Hours passed as Emily read. Then she found something that made her stop breathing. One journey contained photographs of a young woman. The resemblance was shocking. The woman looked almost identical to Emily. Same eyes, same smile, same freckles. Under one photo, her grandmother had written, "My daughter, Sarah." Emily blinked. Her mother wasn't named Sarah. Her mother was Linda. Confused, she turned more pages. The story slowly emerged. Decades ago, before Linda was born, Grandma had another daughter, Sarah. Emily had never heard the name before. Not once. The journal revealed heartbreaking details. Sarah had died in a car accident at 19. The loss shattered her grandmother. The cottage became her refuge, a place to grieve, a place to remember. Emily felt tears forming. Her grandmother had carried this pain for decades, completely alone. No one in the family ever spoke about it, perhaps because the memories hurt too much. She continued reading. Then another surprise appeared. The final journal entries focused on Emily herself.
Grandma had written about watching her grow up, about seeing Sarah's kindness reflected in her granddaughter, about believing Emily would someday need the cottage. Need it for what? The answer appeared several pages later. Grandma wrote, "This place heals broken hearts. It saved me when I had nothing left." Emily closed the journal. The room suddenly felt emotional. Not frightening, not mysterious, just sad. Very sad. As evening approached, she decided to stay overnight. The cottage felt safe, comforting, almost familiar. She cooked a simple dinner, then sat by the fireplace. For the first time since the funeral, she felt close to her grandmother again. A soft smile appeared on her face. That was when she heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Emily nearly jumped off the couch. Nobody should have been there. The nearest town sat miles away. The knock came again, louder. Her heart raced. Slowly, she approached the door. "Hello?" No answer. She peeked through the window. A man stood on the porch. Older, gray-haired, holding a small metal box. Emily cautiously opened the door. The stranger looked at her for several seconds, then smiled. "You have her eyes." Emily stepped back. "What?" "Your grandmother's eyes." "Who are you?" The man lifted the box. "My name is Walter." His voice trembled. "I've been waiting 20 years for someone from your family to come back." Emily's stomach tightened. "Why?" Walter glanced toward the cottage, then toward the woods, as though making sure nobody else could hear. "Because your grandmother asked me to give you this." He handed her the metal box. The lock had already been removed. Inside sat dozens of old letters, photographs, and a sealed envelope. Across the envelope, written in Grandma's handwriting, were 5 words. "Open only after finding Sarah." Emily stared at the message. Confusion flooded her mind. Because Sarah had died decades ago. At least that's what every journal claimed. Slowly, she looked back up at Walter. His expression had turned pale. Then he whispered something that changed everything. "Your grandmother lied about Sarah's death." And before Emily could ask another question, Walter revealed a photograph hidden beneath the letters. A recent photograph, taken less than 2 years earlier. The woman in the picture was older now, but unmistakable. Sarah was alive. Emily uncovers the truth about Sarah, learns why her grandmother kept the secret for decades, and discovers the real purpose of the hidden cottage. Emily stared at the photograph. Her hands shook. The woman was older now. Gray strands mixed into her dark hair. Small wrinkles framed her eyes. But there was no doubt. It was the same woman from the journals. Sarah. Alive. The room suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too impossible. Emily looked at Walter. "That's not possible." Walter slowly sat down. "I know how it sounds. My grandmother wrote that Sarah died. She wanted everyone to believe that." Emily's mind raced. Nothing made sense anymore. Why would a mother tell her family that her daughter had died if she was still alive? Walter took a deep breath. The truth is complicated. Emily sat across from him. Walter carefully unfolded one of the letters from the metal box. 42 years ago, Sarah fell in love with someone your grandmother strongly opposed. Emily listened silently. The arguments became unbearable. Sarah eventually left town with him. Walter paused. They planned to start over somewhere new. Then what happened? Your grandmother panicked. Emily frowned. Walter continued. She thought Sarah would come back after a few weeks. She didn't. Months became years. The relationship between mother and daughter completely collapsed. Letters went unanswered. Phone calls stopped. Pride grew on both sides. Neither wanted to be the first to apologize. A sad silence filled the room. Walter looked down at the floor. Then, your grandfather died unexpectedly. Everything changed. Grandma desperately wanted to reconnect. But by then, she didn't know where Sarah was living. She searched, asked questions, followed leads. Nothing worked. Years passed. Then one day, a private investigator located Sarah. Alive, healthy, living hundreds of miles away. Emily leaned forward. So why didn't Grandma tell everyone? Walter smiled sadly. Because she was ashamed. Ashamed of the mistakes she had made. Ashamed that pride had cost her a relationship with her daughter. Instead of explaining decades of family conflict, she allowed people to assume Sarah was gone forever. It was easier than admitting the truth. Easier than reliving the pain. Emily felt tears forming. Her grandmother had spent years carrying guilt. Alone. Walter pointed toward the sealed envelope. Open it. Emily carefully broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. The first line instantly made her cry. My dear Emily, if you're reading this, you found the cottage. She wiped her eyes and continued. The letter revealed everything. Grandma eventually reconnected with Sarah. Secretly. They met several times each year at the cottage. They laughed, cried, forgave each other. Slowly, they rebuilt their relationship. The hidden cottage became their place of healing, their second chance. But there was one problem. Sarah never wanted to reconnect with the rest of the family. The old wounds were still too deep. Grandma respected her decision. Until the very end. The final pages of the letter contained one last request. If you have found this place, then I believe you're the right person. Emily's heart pounded. The next line changed her life. Please bring our family back together. Attached to the letter was an address. Sarah's address. Emily spent the entire night thinking. Fear battled hope. What if Sarah refused to meet her? What if she slammed the door? What if old pain still ruled her life? The next morning, Emily left the cottage. 8 hours later, she arrived at a quiet neighborhood. A small blue house stood at the end of the street. Emily sat in her car for several minutes, trying to gather courage. Finally, she walked to the front porch, knocked, and waited. The door opened. The woman from the photograph stood before her. For a moment, neither spoke. Sarah's eyes widened. Then she noticed the letter in Emily's hands. Tears instantly filled her eyes. Mom's cottage, she whispered. Emily nodded. Sarah covered her mouth. For several seconds, both women simply stared at each other. Then Sarah stepped forward and wrapped Emily in a hug. Years of distance, years of silence, years of regret, gone in a single moment. 6 months later, the family gathered at the cottage for the first time. Stories were shared, photographs were passed around, laughter echoed through the rooms. Even Emily's mother finally met the sister she never knew existed. The healing wasn't perfect. No family story ever is. But it was real. As the sun set that evening, Emily sat alone on the porch, the same porch where her journey had begun. She smiled toward the woods. The mystery wasn't about a hidden cottage. It wasn't about a secret deed. It wasn't even about a lost daughter. It was about forgiveness. The kind that arrives late, but arrives anyway. And somewhere deep in her heart, Emily knew her grandmother was finally at peace.
If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more inspiring stories. Share in the comments, what family lesson stayed with you the most from this story?